You're on Nightside with Dan Ray on WBZ, Boston's News Radio.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Sherry Yellen. Dr. Yellen, welcome to Nightside. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. It's good to be here.
Good to have you. You're a workplace and a leadership expert and author of The Science of High Performance Leadership. God, we need high-performance leadership, that's for sure. And you're going to talk about a study that says the 4-day work week actually might be more efficient. It's a 5-day work week because those of us who work 5 days, and I'm on the air 4 hours a day, 5 nights a week, so I have never had a night when I could basically do nothing. So this is pretty strong evidence to go to the 4-day work week. Tell us about the study. Who did it? How legit is it, in your opinion?
Yeah, so it's an interesting study, and it's one of many, but actually an international study and showed that it was a win-win on both sides. So not only were employees they took fewer sick days. They at least indicated higher engagement. They were more productive. So that was on the employee side and reported better well-being. But also on the employee side, they showed that there was actually a 15% increase in revenue. So there's enough evidence there for us to at least consider this as an option. We look at everything through the perspective of how to work with the brain rather than against it. And there actually is a lot of research in this area that demonstrates that in some ways a 4-day work week might actually be more efficient and more productive than the 5-day.
Okay, so does this work? I assume this can't work for every business or every job, right?
Absolutely. I mean, where there are times where you need to maybe have a more customer interfacing, but when you think about your workforce, is there a way that you could actually alternate days? So it doesn't have to necessarily be on a Friday, or it doesn't necessarily have to be on a specific day, but how could you alternate so that your workforce is actually having a 4-day work week? I mean, this has been a pretty common standard in a lot of healthcare situations for a long time. And so the research is showing, at least maybe we need to consider it if it makes sense for the organization and what you're there to produce.
Well, there are some jobs, some jobs in the public service sector that go 4 days on and 2 days off, and people kind of like that. Look, in France, they're looking for the 2-day work week. Only kidding. It's a little joke.
Isn't it interesting? Because you think about in this country specifically, it's interesting that you bring that up, because in this country, we frown if somebody takes more than a week's vacation. That seems like a lavish thing to do. Yeah. But you look at other countries and they won't even consider a week a vacation. So it doesn't surprise me that we're seeing some evidence in some other areas. I think there is a point of no return, but at the same time, it's an interesting time in our workplace because there's a lot of variables coming together at once. One of those being the uncertainties and the unknowns and the increase of AI. How is that going to impact productivity? You also have a new generation coming into the workplace that have had a different set of life experiences and values, and then a lot of economic uncertainty. So it's really a time to at least suspend our beliefs that the way things have always been are the way that they always need to be.
No, I understand that. The reason I was kidding about France is that I know that France always has like the month of August they have off. It's like you go to France and there's nothing going on in August. They're on vacances, and they're always talking about the 4-day work week and different cultures around the country. I don't know that I'll ever see a 4-day work week in my lifetime. I assume a 4-day work week, people would have to work 10 hours during the 4 days they work? That's how the math works out, right? Or would it be 4 8-hour days?
Well, you would think, but in this particular study, it really was 4 8-hour work days. And so when you think about the constraints that come when you've reduced the time, what we find is kind of like what we've always known, is that you fill the time that you have. And in this particular study, found that workers were more focused, they prioritized better, and there was less inefficiencies, fewer of those ineffective meetings. And so the constraints in this situation were not actually limitations, but they actually increase productivity with fewer distractions.
Wait a second, they're going to get rid of ineffective meetings? I mean, that's
shocking,
standard.
isn't it?
Okay, so what careers, what occupations were in this study? I mean, I assume it could not have been a comprehensive study of every occupation in America. Were these mostly people who were either retail workers, factory workers? What are we talking about here?
So that's a very good question. Actually, people that were in the position of producing ideas and thoughts. So hang with me for just a second, because a lot of our 5-day work week is from the industrial age, when what we were producing were products, they were widgets, they were things. Yeah. And so many of our workers today actually produce thoughts, right? They're thought workers. They're producing ideas, solutions to problems, etc. So when you think about that shift and you think about what's the technology that's really driving ideas and solutions to problems, that's the 3-pound universe that's between our ears. And so then that causes us to really look to neuroscience and how does the brain work best? And one thing that we know is that the brain is one thing that can't be made cheaper, better, faster, that it actually needs time to think and it needs time to recover. And one of the analogies is when you think about athletes, they're out on the field, they're performing, but most of your professional athletes will say they're experts in recovery. And there's some value here in bringing that over to how do our brains work best. Our brains work best, yes, we have to perform, we have to produce these ideas, but that's only coming when we have the space and the time, especially the recovery, to produce those ideas.
Well,
So
when I produce my ideas for my Monday through Friday talk show, often Saturday and Sunday. So I'm still working on a 7-day work week. Dr. Yellen, thanks so much. Where can folks get your book, The Science of High Performance Leadership? I assume that's available Amazon and all of that?
It absolutely is. Wherever life-changing books are sold, you can find it there or at our website, yellengroup.com.
Sounds great. Yellen, YELLIN Group, GROUP.com, The Science of High Performance Leadership. Thank you very much, Dr. Sherry Yellen.
You.
Appreciate it. Pushing for a 4-day work week. If I get to a 5-day work week, I'm going to be happy. Thank you so much. Okay, have a great night.
Thank you so much, too. Bye-bye.